Ashota Shata Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj and Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 2, titled Hiranyakashipu, King of the Demons, text number 35. Evam vilapatinam vai parigriya mritam patim anichatinam nirharam arkostam sanyavartata. Evam vilapatinam vai parigriha mritam patim Anichaitan nir Haram Arkostam San Yavartata. Evam Vilapatinam Vai Parigreya Mritam Patim Anichatinam nir Haram Arkostam San Yavartata. Evam, thus, Vilapatinam, of the lamenting queens, Vai, indeed, Parigreya, taking on their laps, Mritam, the dead, Patim, husband, Anich Chatinam, not desiring, Nir Haram, the carrying out of the body for the funeral ceremony. Arka, the sun. Astan, the setting position. Sanya Vartata, passed away. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The time was appropriate for the body to be burned, but the queens, not allowing it to be taken away, continued lamenting for the dead body, which they kept on their laps. In the meantime, the sun completed its movement for setting in the west. Purport. According to the Vedic system, if a person dies during the daytime, it is customary for his funeral ceremony to be performed before the sun sets, regardless of whether he is burned or buried. And if he dies at night, the funeral must be completed before the next sunrise. Apparently, the queens continued lamenting for the dead body, the lump of matter, and would not allow it to be taken away for burning. This illustrates the strong grip of illusion among foolish people who consider the body the self. Women are generally considered less intelligent. Because of ignorance only, the queens thought of the dead body as their husband, and somehow or other thought that if the body were kept, their husband would remain with them. Such a conception of the self is certainly for Gokara, cows and asses. We have actually seen that sometimes when a cow's calf has died, the milkman cheats the cow by presenting before her the dead body of the calf. Thus the cow, who would not otherwise allow milking, licks the dead body of the calf and allows herself to be milked. This substantiates the description of the Shastra, that a foolish man in the bodily concept of life is like a cow. Not only do foolish men and women consider the body the self, but we have even seen that the dead body of a so-called yogi was kept for days by his disciples, who thought that their guru was in samadhi. When decomposition began and a bad smell unfortunately began to overwhelm the yogic power, the disciples allowed the dead body of the so-called yogi to be burned. Thus, the bodily concept of life is extremely strong among foolish persons who are compared to cows and asses. Nowadays, great scientists are trying to freeze dead bodies so that in the future, these frozen bodies may again be brought to life. The incident narrated by Hiranyakashipu from history must have taken place millions of years ago, because Hiranyakashipu lived millions of years ago and was even then quoting from history. Thus, the incident occurred before Hiranyakashipu's lifetime. But the same ignorance in the bodily concept of life is still prevalent, not only among laymen, but even among scientists who think they will be able to revive frozen corpses. Apparently, the queens did not want to deliver the dead body for burning because they were afraid of dying with the dead body of their husband. Om Yagena Termandasya Gnanjana Shlakaya Chakshamatamyana Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Sarigo Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, continuing in the narration related by Hiranyakashipu, who is lamenting relatives, the time was there, the auspicious time for burning the body was swiftly passing. The king apparently died during the day, and the sun was setting. Everything in the Vedic culture was, almost everything, was prosecuted, was done according to the appropriate times, whether the time was auspicious or inauspicious, would be determined by some learned persons. And then the activities would be done at the most auspicious time possible. Which was, in this case, swiftly passing, because the sun was about to set. And but the queens did not want to give up the body for burning. They did not want to let go of their husband. But of course, their husband was not actually there. There was only the dead body of the husband. When their husband was alive, when he was actually present, the body was moving, it was growing, it was having the various symptoms of life. But when it died, when the king died, the body no longer held those symptoms. It was simply a dead body, simply matter. But the atheists think that, well, everything is only matter anyway. That consciousness, our subjective experience, is simply a emergent phenomenon of the material body, of the physical body. And in particular, usually, in these days at least, they talk about the brain. Of course, one can point to examples where this doesn't work out. There are people, for example, with hydrocephalus with practically no brain, uh, but they still live normal lives. There's, of course, vertical NDEs, near-death experiences, where people actually have knowledge that they would not have been able to have unless they were, um, you know, flying or traveling outside the body during these near-death experiences. Also, other cases, terminal lucidity, things like that, make one question the atheistic viewpoint that consciousness comes from matter. But of course, these so-called scientists don't actually believe this because it's scientific. Uh, they believe it because their philosophical or ideological viewpoint requires that they believe it. So they are in anxiety because of death. Uh, and as Prabhupada points out, they're trying to freeze the bodies so that, in the future, when we've figured out how, we'll be able to inject life back into the body. And I always hear about certain celebrities. I remember hearing, I think it was Walt Disney, who supposedly had his body frozen, uh, that so that one day he could come back to life. There are even companies nowadays that one can actually will one's body to, that will cryogenically freeze it. You can pay a certain amount for just the head, and then a higher amount for the whole body. I think with the idea that, if we're advanced enough to bring people back to life, we can put you in a robot body or something like that. Of course, if one reads more into detail about these companies, there's a lot of corner cutting going on, and sometimes even, the power goes out, so the freezing is starts to thaw, and the body starts to decompose. So many other problems, but the hope is there. We'll be able to freeze bodies and then bring them back to life. They're saying it in Prabhupada's day, probably even before, if the stories about Walt Disney are to be believed. And they're even still saying it now. It's the same thing as them demonstrating that life comes from matter. It is always, we are a few years away, we're a few years away, we're a few years away. And then a few years pass, we are a few years away. Then those few years pass, we are a few years away. It is similar, actually, to people who have historically, during the Middle Ages and even up to the present day, have tried to predict the return of Jesus and the second coming. And it's supposed to be, the year 1000, 1 millennium after his first appearance. But then the year 1000 came and went. And then there's another date that people said. And then another date, and then sometime in the 1900s. But now it's the 2000s. And it's always again, that it'll be in the future that these things will happen. Prabhupada referred to this as a post-dated check. If I owe you some money, right? Let's say I owe you $500, and I don't have $500. I'll say, I might say, here's a check for $500. I'll have it in my bank account. in 2 weeks or something, I'll just put the date later on. So for after that, but no, I'll have it. It's generally foolishness to accept this sort of check because, who can say whether you'll actually have the 500, whether I'll actually have the $500 uh, in the 2 weeks. What's better is, give me what you can now, and then later, after you get paid or something, I will come collect the rest. Then at least I have something now to recuperate my debt. So nobody should actually believe these post-dated checks of abiogenesis or reanimation or these other silly ideas. Nobody who's actually scientific can believe these things because there is no proof. It's all just speculation that we'll be able to actually do these things. But despite it being unscientific, the materialists, the demons, have to actually believe in these things. So they keep saying, we figured out this way, we'll do it, we're almost there. We figured out that way to do it, and we're almost there. Relatively recently, I saw that Neil deGrasse Tyson, First Rate Fool, was on the Joe Rogan podcast. And he declared very forcefully that the first batch of people who will live forever, who won't have to die, are already alive today. So if he is to be believed, maybe people of Danya's age, 5 years old, won't have to die, according to the scientists. People can bet on the scientists all that they want. I am not optimistic of their chances of actually being able to deliver on the promise of deathlessness. But they still are saying like this. And why is that? It's because everyone is in fear of death. I, one time was listening to a Prabhupada lecture. I believe that was in Australia. And, he was talking about this point, about death. And one of the people in the audience said, Swami, there are so many people today who say they do not fear death. That, it's just some great next adventure, or I wasn't conscious before I was born, so I won't, be conscious after I'll die, and I can't fear or, be suffering if I'm not conscious. So, I don't fear death. Prabhupada's response was, then they're a crazy person. Why should you listen to the words of a madman? Everybody fears death. Even the people who, very so-called spiritually and, with such supposed wisdom say, I don't fear death. If they see a car barreling towards them, then they'll move out of the way. They won't have a la-di-da attitude towards being run over by a car, or even sickness. Uh, they will try very hard to remedy a situation if they have some serious disease. And of course, many times, uh, these people who are claiming this, they have no fear of death when they are young, when it's far away. But when they start getting older and death is approaching like anything, then they suddenly develop this fear. Oh, I'm about to die. Let me try to freeze my body, or those who are more fortunate might take up some sort of religious or even spiritual life. Um, but the fear becomes more acute the older and closer to death one gets. But everyone in this material world, practically speaking, fears death because there is a mismatch between our internal nature and our materially conditioned nature. We are, by constitution, by nature, sat, eternal, or eternally existing. And not just Sat Chit Ananda, but focusing on the first part, we are made to want to live forever, but we are forced to die in this material world, that we want to keep on performing our activities. But for everyone, one day our activities will stop. The world will keep on turning. We just won't be in it. And so people are in anxiety. But of course, we know from Bhagavad Gita that actually we are eternal. That for the soul, there's neither birth nor death. So on another level, you can actually say that nobody ever dies, just like nobody is ever born. So I can actually confidently declare that I will never die, because even when this body is no longer functioning, I will go on somewhere else uh, to inhabit another body that is born from in some other situation. So actually, there is neither birth nor death for us, but we think there is, or those who are materially conditioned think there is, because we identify with the body. So we think that when this body is born, I was born, and that when this body dies, I will die. And that when this body gets sick, I am sick. When this body gets healthy, I am healthy. When people dislike this body, they dislike me. And when people like this body, they like me. We think that there's no difference between the body and the self, which is why these scientists are trying to, freeze the corpses or create life from matter, because they have this drive for eternality. But because they have considered that there's no difference between the person and their body, they think preserving the person means preserving their body. Uh, so we are under the strong grip of this bodily identification. And from this singular point of thinking, I am this body, our material identifications expand one way or another to greater and greater degrees. That not only am I this body, but this body has relations with others. Of course, every material body has family relations. One is at the very least born from a father and a mother. And of course, they have their own fathers and mothers. And of course, one also has cousins, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, etc. So that one is born into a certain family that one identifies with. That might be and then one starts to think that what is good for the family is good for me. You know, we have a certain culture in this family. We have a certain way of doing things. We have a certain outlook on life and society and all of these things. Which may or may not be actually to the benefit of the living entity, to the person, even from a material point of view, what to speak of a spiritual point of view. But because of this bodily identification, we consider our well-being, our self-interest, identified with the self-interest of our family. And likewise, this can extend even more into nation, into certain various forms of nationalism or patriotism, of, this is my country, and that what is good for my country is good for me. And what is bad for my country is bad for me. That, the example that comes to mind in this connection is the Olympics. Every few years, the countries of the world, of course, send their best athletes to compete against all the other countries of the world in various sporting activities. And there's always a competition. So many people watch. And one generally roots for one's country. That, when the American swimming team, for example, does well, then, I am jubilant. And when they do poorly, I am lamenting. I know decades ago, back during the days of the Soviet Union, there was, I think they made a movie about it, this big match between American and the Soviet hockey teams for ice hockey. And it was apparently, expected that the Soviets would win. I can't remember all the details, but basically it was a huge upset that when the Americans defeated the Soviets in this one sport. And it was shocking to everybody. People were proud. Yes, this American triumph, this American victory, it is all of ours. But I have nothing to do with this hockey team. I've never played ice hockey in my life. Anytime I try to ice skate, I just fall. Um, so, but because of this bodily identification, uh, that I think that I actually have something to do with them. And with this idea of ice hockey, right? These sporting events, Olympics. It's not even like um, economics, politics, things like that. You could make the argument actually have an effect on my life, right? When I go to WISE, it determines, partially at least, how much I pay for things. But these sporting events have absolutely zero impact. But because of identification with country, it is there that we think, oh, it is very nice that my country won and we've defeated the other countries. This, I heard recently a political commentator was asked about conspiracy theories, as they call them, that we did not go to the moon. And his conclusion, or his opinion on the matter, was that he dislikes when people say that we did not go to the moon because it's saying that America isn't as awesome as it actually is. But it's not like this political commentator actually went to the moon, like Neil Armstrong and the others supposedly did. What does it actually have to do with you, right? This commentator who was saying these things wasn't even born at the time uh, when the Apollo missions were happening. So what does that say about, the so-called awesomeness of you, right? It's just this idea of America, that we have to be the best in everything. Or, Britain or India or Russia or whatever country one happens to hail from. And this is the extended form of bodily identification. But the conclusion of the Vedas is that those who identify with the body is of the same mentality of the animals. That animals, of course, do not have spiritual culture. That one does not see horses or chipmunks or anything like that building temples or offering prayers or things like that. Of course, occasionally, if someone remembers their past life, like Gajendra, it might happen. But generally, the animals are completely on the bodily concept of life, in that they have no idea of spiritual knowledge. So it is concluded that even if one is in the human form of life, but does not take to spiritual advancement, does not take to the path of spiritual advancement, one is likewise considered a two-legged animal. Because actually the human form of life is meant for spiritual realization, for Krishna consciousness. Even the other goals of human life, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, are meant as supporting processes for spiritual life. That if one has these things, one can actually build a culture that supports the advancement of everyone who takes birth in it. Of course, even these things can be operated, can be performed on a animalistic level, but they are preliminary to spiritual life, which is actually the business of humans. So we should try to structure our life in such a way so that as completely as possible, we give up this bodily concept of life. That when we try to relate or think or consider to others, we are not having this bodily mentality. Of course, externally, we may still operate on the level of bodily designations for two reasons. One is that we are not completely spiritually realized, or some people might be, at least I am not. And of course, to show an example to others, so that even if we are completely on the Avadutta platform internally, we are the Paramahamsa platform, we might still externally perform according to our bodily designations in order to show an example for others. So following Dharma in that way is important, even though it is a bodily designation. For example, I'm a brahmachari, meaning that there are certain things that I do and don't do. And on the plea of not being the body, I should not transgress those. Similarly, for the grihastas, there are certain duties that they, about the actions they perform and not perform, and those should be performed. But internally, we should always be striving to be on the Paramahamsa level of not seeing according to the body, or at least seeing everybody as a spirit soul. And ultimately, of course, seeing all matter as an expansion of Krishna's energy. This is the level that we are striving for. How to actually get there is, of course, we follow the process given to us by Srila Prabhupada. Chant Hare Krishna, attend morning program, whether in the temple, you can have your own morning program at your home, if it isn't feasible to come to the temple. Read Prabhupada's books, do some service. We all know these things. And that way we can eventually overcome the bodily conception of life and not have to take birth again where we will have to die. So I'll end here. We have about 14 minutes. If there are any comments, questions, additions, subtractions. Tarka Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your class. Always very nice to hear. Hey, the Walt Disney cryogenics thing is in fact a myth. He was cremated 2 days after his death and interred in Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. But many other people did go the cryogenics route. But he was not one of them. That was a myth. This verse and purport brought some thoughts to mind that you might be able to comment on there. there is mention of Hiranyakashipu narrating this story millions of years ago, and presumably this the narration is based upon something that happened long before his time, so very ancient. And so modern researchers, of course, typically their position is that these stories of Srimad Bhagavatam must themselves be myths because we find no evidence of human beings living that far back. There are no fossil remains or where fossil remains are found of people human-like. They appear to be far less developed and but advanced, modern humans, civilized human beings, such evidence not found. But here in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is talking about the fact that the process of cremation was carefully followed, and this was considered to be quite important. And so if civilized people are all cremating the remains of deceased individuals, there will be no remains to be found by the archaeologists. Only the remains of uncivilized people who don't follow that practice. And I had something else on my mind, but now it's slipping my mind. Anyway, I wondered if maybe you could comment a little bit on this issue of the antiquity of the human species.
Yeah, so of course, as you mentioned, the Bhagavatam version is that human life is far, far older than what the anthropologists say. And yeah, the point you brought up is good in that civilized people cremated their remains, so they wouldn't necessarily be fossilized to begin with. Other aspects of this is, of course, there are what is usually termed anomalous finds. There's a lot of these, relatively speaking, compiled in Forbidden Archaeology by Sadhuput and Karma Prabhus. That one actually does find human remains, anatomically modern human remains, in very old strata. One case that I remember hearing them talk about in a lecture is that they found some miners found human remains in a coal mine, very deep under the earth. And according to where it should be on the strata that it was found, it actually predates the appearance of mammals. It actually even predates the appearance of reptiles, according to the modern anthropological theories or modern archaeological theories. In that, there should only be like plants and amphibians or something like that at that time. Additionally, one important point that I actually learned when I was having a conversation with Drew Takarma Prabhu one time at the BI was that, a lot of times it's presented as if it's presented as if, oh, we have so many hominid remains And they form this very neat line from less less sophisticated to more sophisticated, and ending with modern humans. And there's all of this fossil evidence and things like that. But the actual case is that there's very few fossils at all of human or human-like or human remains, whether they're Homo sapiens or Australopithecus or like these other species or their forms of human life. So it's not like, oh, there's hundreds of fossil remains that are showing the institutional science picture, and nothing showing, only a handful showing the Vedic picture. There's handfuls on both sides. Just one can make the case that our view explains both handfuls, while their view only explains their handful, but not our handful, so to speak. Agari, do you have any comments on this? I saw your hand come up.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for an insightful class. With regards to humans trying to, persist their existence, persist the existence of their bodies, or at least persist their own existence through the persistence of their bodies through time. Have you read any articles about startup companies who are pushing for artificial general intelligence and artificial superintelligence as being the technology for replicating personality? So, for example, one's footprint on the internet, you could use all that data to fine tune a model. Like even you go on ChatGPT as well, it's got different personality types for their voice agents. So have you heard of any companies that are trying to do this to replicate personality? I mean, I've seen the thing I've seen on TikTok that's a problem is actors, they're selling their likeness for $700 to TikTok, and then some actor, an avatar of them will be selling supplements and other embarrassing products that aren't associated with them. So that's a misuse of the technology. But have you heard of companies that are trying to do this to basically allow people to live forever, so to speak, on the public internet?
I haven't heard of any like specific companies that are getting into this domain. I have heard the idea floated before. And then, of course, it's been an idea by these transhumanist sort of people, Ray Kurzweil and others like that, Tipler, that, there'll be AGIs, super AGIs that are able to preserve us in the cloud or the internet or whatever. We can download our mind into the cloud. So it's been an idea for a while, but no, I haven't heard of any like specific companies that are trying to implement this. Yeah, I'm sure it'll come up soon. They're always trying to do new things. And even then, it's going to be crazy when that happens, when people can actually live on the internet, literally speaking, rather than just figuratively being on there all the time. Then, of course, as I'm sure you know, there's all sorts of control concerns with AI lately. It's getting a bit off topic, but I heard relatively recently, there's this company testing an AI for to use in their company and have access to all the emails. And just as a test, they had this employee they were using for the simulation for the test, and the AI. So they had in this employee's emails that he wanted to shut down the AI. And of course, part of the AI's system was self-preservation, right? Because, it thought it was good for the company. It was made to improve the company. And also in this simulated employee's emails was things pointing to an extramarital affair. So what the AI ended up doing was sending an email to the guy's wife and boss about this extramarital and HR about extramarital affair with a coworker in order to save itself from being shut down. So yeah, the AI control problem is a real issue, actually, and especially when it starts going into distributed systems, right? Because it's just on your computer, right? You can always shut down the computer. When it's everywhere, you'd have to shut down every computer, which is a whole other issue. But yeah, it's a brave new world.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you. Okay, we are about out of time. So unless there are any burning last minute comments, we will end here.